Testing, testing.
Hello, everyone.
Paul, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah. Can you hear?
Yeah.
Hello?
A little jittery.
Is it? Okay, let's see.
What about my volume? Is it good enough? I've different mic.
Yeah, you're all good.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. We are getting started. How is everyone doing today? All right, give us a minute here as we get set up for our Soroban developer workshop. We are writing our first smart contract on Soroban, and we have Morgan and Paul joining us on stream here today to do this workshop. Hey, Morgan. Hey, Paul. How are y'all doing?
Hey, everyone. Doing good?
Yeah, going good here. How are you, Nuhia?
I'm doing well. I am in the SDF office. It's been so exciting. The DevRel team has been expanding and we're onboarding so many new developers, and it's been exciting. Soroban's really changing and we're innovating, and I can't wait to see what more is going to come out of this. But all right. Oh, you were at Paris Blockchain Week, right, Morgan? So what is this workshop all about?
That's true. By the way, the office
Morgan,
looking great.
Yes. Here, I feel like this is what the SDF office looks like, everyone. For anyone curious.
We need a tour.
Yes, I think we should do like a live stream tour of SDF's California SF headquarters. I think that would make a fun stream.
Just go and interrupt everybody's work and see what they're doing.
Yeah, just like pop around and interact with people.
I'd love to see that.
What's with the media kit in the background? I don't know what media kit in the background. Yeah, we'll find out with, yeah, I know, but so many comments here. Cool. Single monitors only. Yeah, y'all, we have only single monitors around in the office. I will let them know we need curved monitors. We need all that cool tech. But yeah, all right. Without further ado, Paul, Morgan, I will let you all kick off about this workshop and talk about what you presented at Paris Blockchain Week. And I'll let you start off, Paul.
Cool, yeah. I think I'm presenting here. How do I make that happen on the screen? There we go. Yeah, cool. That looked like it a second ago. Yeah, that's the one. Cool. Yeah, welcome everybody. Good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you happen to be. Welcome to a live stream. I'm writing your first smart contract on Soroban. Here's what we're going to be going through today. So first off, we'll do a bit of an intro. We'll talk a bit about what is Soroban for those that don't know. We'll have a cool Hello World demo from Morgan. And we'll talk a little bit about why Soroban's important, why it matters, why it's good, why you should build everything on it. And then we'll have a bit more from Morgan on his kind of journey and how he got to Soroban and how he got involved with all this. And then Tyler will share a bit on how you can get involved. And then we'll wrap up from there and we'll do some questions and stuff at the end. So first off, who are we, right? My name is Paul. We'll start there. I'm a staff engineer at the Stellar Development Foundation, which means I get to work on Soroban every day, building it and making it happen for all of you. So I'm really excited to be here today to share some of the stuff that I've been working on. What is the Stellar Development Foundation? If you don't know and you've somehow stumbled into this stream anyway, the SDF works with the Stellar community, which is all of you, to build the Stellar network. The Stellar network is a fast and reliable L1 blockchain with finality in just 5 seconds. The network's been live since about 2015 and has seen sustained real-world usage of 150 transactions a second with literally no problem, just cruising along, which is pretty crazy to think about. It has a global network of anchors, is what we call, which are on and off ramps, issuing on-chain versions of assets from the real world, including cash access, which we'll talk a little bit about later. And for the last year, we've been building something new, Soroban. So what is Soroban? So Soroban is a new add-on to the Stellar network. Traditionally, the vanilla Stellar network didn't have smart contracts. There was a few L2 attempts, right, like turrets that some of you might know, but they had some issues around that, like atomicity, and other things like that. So we wanted to open up more decentralized innovation to the network and to open up new opportunities to the underserved and unbanked populations that Stellar is built to serve. And I mean, my big thing is payments is such a small part of the financial world. It's like an important thing to get right, but it's just kind of the base layer of what we can build here. So we announced the project that would come to be known as Soroban back in January of last year. Since then, we've shared 8, I think, iterative releases. Yeah, we're on preview 8 now. Onto our experimental testnet known as FutureNet, so devs can experiment, learn, and contribute to the design discussions. We've been regularly running a program called Sorobanathon. We'll hear a bit more about that later from Tyler. And we regularly discuss design choices and onboard new devs to the community on our Discord. The community interactions with all of you lovely folks who are now in the Stellar community. Sorry, I don't make the rules, but I will enforce them, so you are going to be part of the community now. The community interactions and the public input has been really exciting to see. That's been my favorite part of this journey. It's been absolutely mind-boggling. It's impacted almost everything about Soroban, right? From naming to authentication, how does that work, to how Soroban should integrate with the existing vanilla Stellar network. And while Soroban isn't tightly coupled to Stellar specifically, it is designed to work well with the network. So a bunch of stuff on that point. It's written end-to-end in Rust for speed, efficiency, and access to the ecosystem that exists there. It comes with a bunch of plug-and-play SDKs for simple to complicated authorization models, and it's built to scale, right? Because it has to keep up with the rest of the existing network. It can't slow down the network. But the thing I'm probably most excited about in Soroban and looking forward to seeing is how it's empowering all of you in the community, now that you can build on Stellar, completely unchained. I'm sorry. If I didn't make that joke, Tyler said he'd fire me, so had to happen. Right. At this point, I'd like to introduce Morgan. He's a founder of UseSoroban.app. He's a community member who has been building some incredible stuff to help onboard other devs to Soroban. And he's going to show us a bit about what he's been working on.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to start by sharing my screen. Should have done this earlier. All right. So here's a thing that every developer starts their programming journeys with. We all like to say hello, and we all like to say hello to the world as the very first thing that we do in our programs. And almost everyone starts their journey that way. And in fact, the time it takes for someone to say hello world in a specific programming environment may be the determining factor if they're going to continue their journey in that platform or not. So I definitely want you guys to stick around for the rest of the presentation, the rest of the talk. So I'll just get started with the hello world part. All right, so what do we have here? As Paul mentioned, I am the founder of UseSoroban.app, which is this tool that you see right here. It is a developer playground for Soroban smart contracts. Now, what do we see on screen exactly? Well, I'm logged in, so I have access to the gated alpha here, and I have the ability to create a new project. So let's go ahead and do that. New project pops up, and let's go ahead and delete everything because we're going to start from scratch. So what's this environment all about? Well, first, we have a code editor to the left here. This is where we'll just put our Rust/Soroban This playground runs on Rust and the Rust Soroban SDK. As you continue your journey, you'll find out that there's other SDKs for Soroban available. For now, we're going to deal with Rust because that's the sort of reference implementation. All right, so we have the code editor. We'll put our Rust in Soroban, and then we have some widgets. So right now, console is open, code is open, and let's get started with the hello world part. So how do we do that in Rust? Well, I guess we write a hello function, and we call the print line macro and say hello. Okay. Compile it, and that worked. This is a Rust program, as it should be compiled, and I abstract all the details for creating cargo projects and defining targets and so forth. So you just sort of write some code and click compile, and you're off to the races.
Morgan, I'm going to interrupt you for just 1 second. Can you zoom in a little bit more because we can't see it on
A little bit
screen as
more.
well. Perfect.
How about now?
A lot more.
A lot
Right?
more?
Yeah, a little bit more, I would say. Yeah.
It will be unusable if I zoom in any further. So I
Okay,
do
then we're
apologize
good.
for anyone that's,
We can see.
or we can hide my face. There's a lot of stuff on screen that's not the code, so we can just sort of focus on the code. Here we go.
I think that will make it better. There we go. Sweet.
Or
I love how
hide
the comments are like, I'm almost blind, and there we go. Okay, sweet. We got one confirmation. I can see it fine. Carry on.
Perfect. And if we can hide the faces, because like the vertical space might be useful. So
Perfect.
just nothing but the screen share. All right, perfect. Thank you, Anuya. All right, carrying on. So print line, hello, didn't work. Well, at least it compiled and didn't produce what we wanted. Why is the question? And well, we're working in a Soroban environment, right? Soroban expects a certain kind of format for these things to work. And everything that we want to be able to call has to live in a contract. So contracts are structs in Rust. We're going to declare a contract struct. This name can be anything you want. I'm going to call it contract because I couldn't come up with a better name. All right, so we go ahead and define an implementation for contract. Let's go ahead and copy this function here. Okay. All right. Compile this again. Now that worked. Again, no compiler errors. But the problem is we still don't see any hellos popping up. So that's not great. Ideally, you want to work with the SDK here because a structure like this is not really Soroban. We got to tell it to do a little bit more. So for that, we're going to use the Soroban SDK, and we're going to import the contract implementation macro, and that's going to do a bunch of things, but essentially this will convert this implementation right here into a Soroban contract. And okay, we have a few errors over here. By the way, Rust is super famous for really good compiler errors, and in this environment, which is enabled by Soroban, the way it's designed to leverage WebAssembly and Rust, so we'll get those beautiful Rust compiler errors, and we can see that there's some problems with the panic implementation, although it's not entirely clear what's going on. So I'll just sort of skip the mystery here and solve this problem by defining this macro right here. So contracts on the blockchain have to be super, super efficient in how they use the available ledger space. And Rust programs, even though they're pretty light, they still carry a bunch of stuff that we don't really need as part of our contracts. So to eliminate everything that we don't need and just get the Rust that, the basic Rust that is required for contract logic, well, we declare the noSTD macro. This, unfortunately, removes the ability for us to use the print line macro to print this stuff. And okay, so let's get rid of that. Now we've back to a solid compiling contract here. And let's go ahead and declare this function as a public function. Now we have something on screen up here that's looking like a button. So in this actions widget, which is sort of a third of this interface in the middle, is where you will be able to click and interact with every function that your contract declares. So our contract right here declares a single hello function. We can call it, and we'll see in the console, a return value. So it's implied that a function without an explicit return value returns none in Rust. So same applies here. And we're going to return value null. I guess we can leverage this return dynamic to finally say hello to everyone tuning in. And for that, we will need a special type. So again, since we can't use a Rust string, it's unavailable, we have to figure a different way to carry our information. And for that, we're going to use a symbol, which is an efficient data type in Soroban for storing alphanumeric characters, essentially all the letters of the alphabet plus the digits and the underscore. So what we're going to do with symbol is we're going to initialize a short symbol that says hello. And short just means that this sequence of characters will be able to fit in a single 64-bit value, which is pretty important when it comes to this context. Let's recompile this again. And oh, thank you, Rust compiler. We are returning a value. So let's make sure that we declare what we're returning. And let's call this. All right, so we have a return value hello from this function right here. And this is sort of your most basic implementation of a Soroban contract that says hello to anyone tuning in. Now, let's make it a little bit more spicy. And let's use a little bit more of the environment here. So let's say we're going to log a value. Everybody loves logging. As someone coming in from a web developer background, I use console log all the time, and console log is the best. So we have an equivalent in Soroban. It's called log, the log macro, and we're going to declare a new function called hello2. And what are we going to do here? We're going to say hello to a specific name. That's going to be a symbol. And we're not going to return anything. Okay, so how do we interact with this log macro? Well, it's a macro, so we use a bang. And then the first argument is the environment within which we're logging this value. And you'll get used to this concept of every single function that your contract has that interacts with anything in the outside world will have to have environment as the very first argument. It's kind of like your access to everything. So log accepts the first argument being the environment. So we're just going to pass in a reference to the environment. Next up, we have a string. And we're going to use hello, bang, and then we're going to provide the name. Okay, let's compile this. Oh, we're missing environment in this import. And a handy feature is if you're having problems with a specific type or you're missing something, you can go ahead and click links right inside of your compiler widget that will take you to the documentation. So it's an easy feedback loop. So now that we've imported an environment, we can recompile this again and try saying hello to Twitch, I guess, is where most of you are. And in this console widget, we can see that in between hello2, which is the function that we're calling, and the return value, we have a log that says hello Twitch. All right, so I'm almost done with the first demo. anyone and everyone that's tuning in, you can actually test this on your phone. So this is going to be a multimodal demo. And for that, I'm going to take my phone here. So I just popped up this share modal. I'm going to take my phone. This is an actual phone I have here. Bring up the camera. Hey, everyone. And I'll go ahead and look at the QR code here. Tap on Soroban.app. And we can see we're taken to a version of Soroban.app, which is mobile optimized. And, we got to work on mobile experiences just as much as a desktop experience. And someone that's designing these apps, we got to be mindful that that's where our audience is. So this kind of interface will allow users to test this contract anywhere they are, especially on the mobile phone. So we have access to the same sort of widgets. We have the console open, and actions is a sheet down at the bottom. We can go ahead and call hello like we did before. Quick access down at the bottom to the previously called functions. And we can call hello to, and let's do Twitch. Confirm. And then we can call this function with the same arguments if we want to, or we can change the arguments and do YouTube. Okay. All right. So that does conclude the demo. Everyone that scanned the QR code and were able to interact with the app here, congratulations. If right now this is still in a gated alpha, if you want access to the current build, please tweet me at Soroban Dev on Twitter, and I'll make that happen. All right, so I'm handing it off back to you, Paul. Paul, you there?
There we go. Okay, I'm back.
All right.
Thanks, Anuha. Thanks, Morgan. Can we get the slides up again? Cool. Thank you. Yeah, so that's Morgan has shown us the basics of Soroban, but I want to go into what actually makes it so special and what makes it so exciting here. So first off, it is batteries included for devs. That's our goal here, right? When we're designing it, everything we're thinking about designing it, that's our goal. And that means we're including everything from storage to authentication and authorization frameworks to token minting and transfers. All that's baked in, right? It's ready to go. So you can focus on your application and not spend ages trying to figure out how to verify an ED 25519 signature, right? Like you shouldn't have to worry about that. And secondly, unlike pretty much any other smart contracting platform out there, because we're launching on the Stellar network, you get access to all the existing assets on the vanilla Stellar network. And I want to address a comment in chat, I think from Matthias, said I should call it classic and not vanilla. And I'm calling it vanilla for a very specific reason, right? Because the existing Stellar network is not going anywhere, right? That's still all staying there. It's not being deprecated. It's not a classic thing, right? It's just a different flavor of the same thing. It'll still be the fastest, cheapest way to use the network. But if you need a bit more power, that's what Soroban's for. Okay, but building on the existing Stellar network means that from day one of launch, your smart contracts can hold and use USDC, right? And many other assets that are already on the network. They also have access to Stellar's cash on and off ramp via our partnership with MoneyGram, which works in over 200 countries worldwide, right? So putting this together, we could think of someone, let's say Julia, right? She doesn't have a bank account. She can go to her local MoneyGram location, deposit cash into the kiosk. She receives USDC on the Stellar network in her wallet. And now with Soroban, she can take that USDC and deposit it into, a lot of things, right? Whatever you're building. But let's say an income generating DeFi protocol where she receives a portion of transaction fees for providing liquidity, right? The partnership between Stellar's Anchor Network and MoneyGram allows users like Julia to move cash straight from their physical real wallet to a DeFi protocol and vice versa, which is something that I don't think has ever been seen on any other blockchain network so far. Yeah. And the third point here, I want to talk about what makes Soroban super special is the scaling optimizations that we're doing. So when designing Soroban, we've been able to learn from the state of the art and handpick the best solutions from each one. So we've designed the transaction execution model to scale across multiple cores. We've calibrated the fee model to maximize throughput and minimize cost while protecting the existing Stellar network traffic. So we've designed a lot of optimizations around the contracts themselves as well, that you don't see on every other chain. So for example, if you look at Near, not to pick on them, I love Near, but they do this. In the Near contracts, you need to do your own serialization and deserialization of arguments when you get stuff in and out. That means you need to compile that into your contract and deploy it as well, right? So you need to include that library. In Soroban, we've pushed as much as we can out to the host environment, where we can say batteries included, right? Which lets us massively reduce the contract size. And you don't need to pay to deploy that code, or your users don't need to pay to run it, right? We can take that a little bit further with built-in contracts. So we have an idea in Soroban of built-in contracts, similar to like precompiles you might know of on other network. So currently this is just for the standard asset contract. And it means that it runs ultra fast and cheap, right? And it lets contracts standardize on the interface within the ecosystem. And that's the standard asset contract that we have in Soroban is how Stellar assets are exposed in Soroban. They look just like any other contract to your contract. So it's really easy to integrate with existing Stellar assets. The last thing here that's really cool, we're actually working on solving state bloat with our state expiration model. So on other chains, you store some data on chain and it's there forever, right? Well, forever, right, in air quotes. We have a rent-based system with evictions and restorations to ensure the chain's working data set stays as lean as possible. So once your rent expires, your data gets evicted and you can pay to have it restored back on chain if you need it. We can do a deep dive on that another day. It's a bit involved, and actually we're still designing some of those elements right now, literally right now on the call on Discord. So at this point, I think Morgan can introduce us a bit how stateful contracts work on Soroban and get some of the basics of those in. And hello.
Boom, I'm back. And Paul's back too. Hey, Paul.
I am also back, yeah.
We're waiting for a screen share.
You are waiting for a screen share of Morgan. So there you go.
Here we go.
Cool, thanks.
All right. Thank you, Anuya.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. So like Paul mentioned, there's quite a bit of innovation going on with Soroban. And the deeper you go into it, the more you can sort of understand. Like you mentioned, there's a design discussion going on right now. We're about to wrap up. Every week, I think they go on. But anyhow, let's discuss the Soroban state of mind, specifically when it comes to storage and preserving things in the ledger. So as I open this up, I want to hide my face and then focus on the code again. All right, perfect. So we're back to a brand new project. I think we should rename this to state. We're working on the state on the Soroban state. Okay, so sooner or later, every developer finds themselves in a situation where their application is not working as expected. I would say raise your hand if that happened to you, but I can't see you. So I assume everyone's had this problem. And we all know the techniques of how to solve these things, like unit testing or logging intermittent values. Using breakpoints is a cool way to inspect stack frames and so forth. But unfortunately, smart contract developers often don't have a rapid workflow for finding bugs or faults in their contracts. And this leaves them with the only option of, hey, I want to test something out. Well, what do? I take the current code for the contract that I have, and I either one of two options. I deploy this to the test net of your blockchain that you're working on, and I test it against a wallet. And that's going to be, if you're very efficient, under a minute, or it could take a little longer. Or your second option, if the blockchain is well equipped for developers, let's say, you can probably deploy to a local Docker running instance. So that's all fine and dandy, but there's a limit, and folks, I guess, tend to not test as much as they're used to because of all the hurdles. And so Soroban takes this challenge head on by providing a guest environment right in the SDK. So you'll be able to see in the documentation, if you follow along this path, where you write a contract and immediately write a unit test for a function. And this is using your regular Rust cargo unit tests. With useSoroban.app, I leverage that functionality of an environment to provide features to rapidly test your contracts. So right here, we're gonna explore state, because let's face it, if we're writing a hello world, probably bugs won't affect anything too much. If we're dealing with state, then bugs all of a sudden become an issue. All right, so let's begin. How do we store something on the ledger? We're going to head and start with the same no STD, so we're not going to import the standard library. We're going to use the critical elements like contract, implementation, and environment within, and let's grab the symbol as well from the SDK. And we're going to declare another contract, okay? And then we're going to implement this contract with a couple of functions. Let's declare this the proper way, contract implementation. All right, so what do we want to test to sort of showcase this? Well, first, let's compile often, right? Never too often to compile. We're going to have some data in the storage on the ledger, and we're going to save and retrieve that data. So we're going to have a couple of functions. So let's declare save as the one that will put data into the ledger, and we're going to store a number. It's going to be U32. Now, save is going to return the same number, just for the sake of it, I guess. And we're going to load a number environment, and it's going to return that number. So it's essentially save and load two functions for this contract. Let's compile this again, make sure nothing breaks. Oh, okay. Well, I guess I compiled it a little too early. Let's return some value here. Oops. Okay. So we have something of an issue. If I remove this, let's make sure this compiles again. Quickly back out of this. Oh, we don't need to back out of this. We're just not returning a value before. Should have trusted the Rust compiler errors. All right, so we call save. It takes in a number. And by the way, this is one of those nice abstractions that you get with an environment like useSoroban.app. Let's say a function takes in some arguments, right? In this case, it takes in a number argument. That's a U32. Well, we have a nice modal that we can input our number, click confirm, and that's going to call our function. As far as integrating into Soroban, there's another nice feature that's part of the, I guess, Soroban contract specification. So when you compile the contract, there's some amount of that byte code that's compiled allocated for specifications. So let's say save something, or rather save a number to the ledger. Okay, let's compile this again. We can see that the modal now incorporates our comment for that function to describe what exactly this number does, or what exactly this function does. So we're going to click confirm, and let's add another specification here, or the docs for this function. Load a number from the ledger. Compile this again, and oh, it doesn't take any arguments. It's not going to display that modal. That's fine. All right, let's return the number as our first exercise. So it's going to be U32 and 42. We get 42 in the console here. And right, so now the magic part. How do we take the number that we provided in our modal here and put it into storage? Well, we need a certain key, something to store it under. And for that, we're going to declare a constant. And it's going to be a symbol value. So that's why I imported symbol. And it's going to be, I'm not original with names under these circumstances, so I'm just going to use storage. And over here, we're going to take the same environment that we've used before for logging, and we're going to reference storage. Okay. Let's compile this. Not the error I was expecting. So storage is a method, not a field, as we can see inside of this error message. We can go ahead and inspect what exactly storage is in the documentation. And let's see exactly how to use it. So we can see that there is a set function under storage. It takes a key and a value. Okay. So with this new knowledge here, since this is a method, not a field, we're going to call this. And since we observe that it has a public function set, we're going to call that set function to store what we're storing. So we're going to provide storage as the key, right? And we're going to provide number that we're storing, or the value. Have this. So save 42. Confirm. All right. How do we know that we did store this correctly? Well, that's why we have this load function here. And how do we retrieve something, right? We used set to store it. How do we retrieve it? Well, we can go back to the documentation real quick and see that there is a get function associated with storage, and it returns an option that's a result that potentially has that value. So there's you'll see that there's some unwrapping that needs to happen. Cool. So we go ahead and reference that same storage, call that same storage, and call the get method, and we want to get the value under storage, the key. So what do we get? We get an error because we're trying to return a U32. So let's return a U32. Now we get another error that says we want to have a U32, but we get an option. So whenever we're getting a value from storage on Soroban, in a Soroban contract, we don't know whether the value is there, and we don't know whether that value is the value that we're going to return. In this case, a U32, or it could be a symbol. We just don't know. So we can go ahead and unwrap this option and see if that works. Well, then there's the question of it returning a result. So at this point, we unwrap the option. We're sure that there's a value there, but we're not sure whether that value is a U32 value. So we can do clever unwrapping here, but I'm just going to do a silly unwrapping. So it panics if it's not a U32. And let's compile this again. So let's go ahead and save 111 and load. Okay. So we just put a number onto the ledger under a specific key, and we retrieved that number from the ledger. We're going to an experiment with 420 and load the value, do something else. It works. Okay. So there's a complication that I want to implement here, and it's a little bit different from what we did during Paris Blockchain Week. This is something that Tomer told me to do. And so I'm just going to see if this works. If it doesn't, well, hey, this is a demo. These things break. So here's the gist. I want to store a number for a specific account. So I want to store numbers under accounts. I just don't want to store a single number. I want to store as many numbers as I have accounts. So we're going to modify this save function here a little bit. We're going to take in a user argument or a parameter that's called user. That's type address. So address refers to any valid blockchain address on the Stellar blockchain. And then we're going to take in a number. We're going to return the same value. And let's just see what this does. So if I call save, I'm greeted with this second field here. So use Soroban, this modal expands to however many arguments that your function takes. And there's another cool abstraction here. When dealing with accounts on the blockchain, it can be like really tricky for someone just getting started, right? How do I know how to generate one? Do I need the private or the secret key here? That's a lot for someone that's into JavaScript or something. So for that reason, use Soroban.app completely abstracts away interactions with accounts by using just regular names. So how many users does the system have? It has 3 users, Alex, Bart, and Callie. You can select either one, and that in the background abstracts it away into a specific address within the current environment, which is running in your browser. All right, so we select Alex 1. So nothing happened really. We just have a parameter that we're calling this function with, but we're not using it yet. So let's try and use this. Okay, so under storage, instead of putting everything into the same key, under the same key, let's try and use user. Okay, so let's compile this thing. It compiled. And let's call Alex and let's do 10. Okay. So that sort of kind of worked, but how do we sort of debug this, right? We can probably do a log here. Although maybe we should just use the load function. Okay, I'll just do the load function here. So when loading previously, we only had 1 key, and we have any number of keys that correspond to each user. So instead of using storage, we're going to use user. Okay. So here's an experiment. So we saved. I think we saved. Let's save 10 under Alex again. So let's load Alex. Oh, we got a 10. So that worked. Let's try Bart. It trapped. Okay, so the trap means that the value doesn't exist, but we explicitly tell this thing to unwrap, not caring about the underlying value. So we can go ahead and sort of test this out. So here's this log macro that we used before. And call this with an arrow just to have some string value in there. And let's see what that returns. We probably need to do some matching here. this. Okay. For the type, I think I'm going a little over the description here, but the point being is that we can store values under whatever key that we want, and the key can be anything. In this case, I just displayed that it can be a specific address. So we'll just go over each user. Alex is going to have 11. Bart is going to have 22. And Callie is going to have 33. And let's go ahead and check each one. So Alex, 11. Okay. Callie, 33. And Bart is 22. So this is much more elegant than what we had during Paris Blockchain Week. We're storing values under specific usernames. Thank you, Tomer, for this suggestion and sort of the nice deviation from the standard here. All right. So that concludes my second demo for the Soroban State of Mind. If anyone wants to, again, experiment with this, please tweet me on Twitter at SorobanDev, and I'll make sure you have access.
Thank you so much, Morgan.
Tyler.
Yeah. Let me bring Tyler onto stream. Howdy, Tyler. How are you?
Hello.
Hello. All right. Let's bring up your screen here. And
nice.
Tell us all about the $100 million, 2 opportunities. Sounds very interesting, so I'll let you kick it off.
Yeah, they don't let me talk about much. They do let me talk about the money. So we've got basically 2 main opportunities here for engaging with Soroban right now. So we're in this phase between being on the future net, moving to test net, eventually we'll be on mainnet later on this year. But while we're in this phase of developing Soroban and really trying to understand how to build it in this malleable stage of solving difficult problems and trying to build the best blockchain, smart contract, value transfer protocol in the world, there's some unique opportunities here. And I'm going to talk about 2 inside of this $100 million adoption fund that the SDF's put out. One is the one that I'm responsible for, and that's fast, cheap, and out of control. It's primarily an educational content generation engine where you can learn Rust, smart contract development, how those 2 things come together under the Soroban umbrella. Right now, it's a game that really takes you through Soroban contract development with the objective of trying to build fast contracts, cheap contracts, and out of control contracts. Over the next few months, this is we're dropping a little bit of alpha today. We're going to be migrating a lot more attention to fast, cheap, and out of control for Soroban development. Stellar Quest is going to become really for vanilla, or if you're on Team Classic, Classic Stellar. That's where that education is going to be, and then for Soroban related material, it'll all be living on fast, cheap, and out of control. So make sure to keep an eye out on that. And the second one would be the Stellar Community Fund, right? So we got our fast, cheap, and out of control. That would be your site for that, FCA 00C or OOC. I have all the domains for this. And then the second one for the folks that are developing protocols or startups wanting to migrate existing DeFi protocols, etc., over to the Soroban ecosystem, the Stellar Community Fund is the place for you. We've really been optimizing, Anka and the team have been optimizing the community fund for both the vanilla classic Stellar applications as well as Soroban applications. So there's a really nice, clean process for getting onto the Stellar Community Fund and getting funding for different protocols or experiments that you might have for that. So those would be the 2 big pieces that I'd call out. Again, the fast, cheap, and out of control for those who are either new to Rust, smart contract development, even as the Soroban ecosystem evolves and grows. A big gap that I have felt as I've explored the competitive landscape is not just teaching people how to write Rust, or teaching people how WASM works, or educating people on DeFi protocols or AMMs, but really trying to identify where our vulnerabilities coming from. How do we write good smart contracts? How do we write safe smart contracts? Where do standards come from, with some of like where Open Zeppelin might have come from in the Ethereum ecosystem, trying to ensure that the contracts that we're building are good. So building out games and community events for tackling specific difficult problems, so that we're able to arrive at good documentation and standards for writing good smart contracts. Developing a smart contract is very different than developing just a standard application. And some of those differences I don't think we've focused enough on solving or teaching for. So that's really what the FCAOC is aiming to solve for, and then the community fund for funding folks that are actually doing application, startup, entrepreneurial type work. So that's those. Make sure to check those out, and I will hand it back to Morgan, I believe.
All right.
Sweet.
I see here, Morgan, you got, we should definitely do weekly informal developer workshops. I think that would be awesome. And I think Mateus is slowly working on something that he's holding secret until he does like a hard
Spill the
launch.
beans, Matthias.
I know. Do you want me to share a screen here, Morgan?
I think we're good.
Okay,
I don't
sweet.
have a slide to go with this. It's just going to be my Soroban story, I guess, and a little background as well. So no slides needed. And yeah, by the way, very nice shout out in the chat here. Free access to viewers if you tweet at me on Twitter.
Yes.
All right, so my Soroban story. So my developer story, going back real far, I started as a kid with a fascination with computers. And I remember I was 14 when I wrote my first line of code. And for me, that was, that experience informed what I was going to do from that point onward.
Mhm.
And I've made a career out of it, and almost 20 years of frustration followed with the joy of seeing something that you've built come to life. So that's, I guess, any developer's journey there. And the reason I'm sharing the frustration with the joy part is because I feel this industry, and I'm talking specifically about the blockchain industry, has not focused enough on the joy of building while providing ample frustration. And you can probably see that in your own experiences a lot. So over the last 2 years, I've tried playing around with a few smart contract platforms, spending considerable amount of time with 2 of them. And in the end, I felt a little bit like Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz in a conversation with Scarecrow and Tin Man, trying to find out why one had no brain and the other one had no heart. And in my frustration, I continued looking for a platform that had both a heart and a brain. And just last November, I found Soroban. The first Sorobanathon was taking place, and Anuja was hosting that, and it was a beautiful experience. On GitHub, you log in, and everybody's sort of submitting their own ideas and thoughts, and experiencing the joy of development.
New technology, and right.
Yeah. So I took part in that. I jumped right on it, and I found out about Soroban in the process. I found out about XDR, which is the data format for storing things on Stellar that Soroban uses. And then I started getting into Rust, and it's a long journey, and doing so without prior experience, mind you. And then lastly was WebAssembly, one of the key building blocks of Soroban. And my first projects were very simple, mostly to do with optimizations of the development workflow, one workflow or another. And I made some submissions along those lines. I think it was 5 in total.
Yeah,
that were
a lot of them, actually. You were one of our superstar submitters to Soroban, if I recall.
Yeah. it was a blast. And the community on Discord was great, and the community on GitHub was great. People were commenting and so forth. So that was a really soft and nice introduction to Soroban.
Mhm.
And my final project as part of Sorobonathon, I think I submitted it last day, was a browser tool for interacting with the Soroban RPC server. Something that a lot of folks do when interacting with any kind of blockchain. You don't go directly to a node you're running, you go to an RPC server. For y'all, remote procedure call server, I remember the HTTPS from Bloomberg. Got to spell it out. So the RPC server thing, I wanted to build a great developer experience for anyone building and testing their contracts, because deploying the contract, invoking the contract is often tricky if you want to do it with arguments and stuff, and especially if you're sort of coming in from a command line. And in doing that, I spent countless hours working on various parts of the stack, from the WASM executable to the host environment. And then it hit me. I realized something. I had everything I needed to build a self-contained browser environment for executing and testing Soroban contracts. And that just sort of blew my mind. Like I had everything I needed to build the perfect playground experience. And so seeing how coupling WebAssembly, the virtual machine, together with the Soroban host environment specification enabled that browser-based developer tool that I had in mind, and many others that you can sort of picture, was my aha moment. And I just started working and seeing how I could build tools with, within the browser that required no setup, no Docker. I'm no fan of like all these massive setups that take 10 minutes if you're efficient. No, nothing, just sort of log into a website and start experiencing Soroban like that. And I immediately afterwards, I started building it, and I started debugging and engaging the community further. And this was, I think, in February, when some of the programs that Tyler mentioned, SCF, I applied with use Soroban.app, because at that point it was brewing for like 2 months. And I got in, and with the help of the community fund, I was able to continue building this sort of, I call it the developer playground of my dreams, because it's everything I ever wanted from a smart contract playground. And all of this happened like from scratch to launching a community funded project in less than 4 months.
Yeah. Like October, so, not even, I think.
It was late November.
Yeah.
And then there was a gap in December, and sort of, it's like light speed. So my experience so far has been stellar. Right. And I really, really appreciate the community for allowing me to go through what I went through. So thumbs up, and yeah, that's my Soroban story.
That was so wholesome and well put, Morgan. Thank you for sharing that. Seriously. I think there's a question here about use Soroban. Where can we make token contracts on use Soroban?
Very soon.
Yeah.
I will open it up.
Office? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll open it up next week. There's a massive update I'm working on ever since getting back from Paris, and stay tuned. I'll keep you guys updated.
Yeah, I mean, Morgan's all into this, y'all. Just to clarify, I mean, he has an awesome office now, and he's like set up like an entire space and whatnot. It's a whole thing. Use Soroban is like the next big thing here in the Soroban ecosystem. You heard it here first. I see there's Mateus is saying that I'll blow your mind 2x, Morgan. Think use Soroban plus test runner plus cooperative coding in that dev environment, aka VS Code live share.
There's a lot of minds ready to be blown, I think, in the next few months.
There's
hopefully
so much
by
innovation happening in this space. Absolutely. I'm so excited. Thank you for everything that you do for the Soroban ecosystem, Morgan. So yeah, I'm going to
I'll
bring
hand it
Paul
off
back
back to
up
you.
on here, everyone. Hey, Paul.
Hey, everybody. Right, I'm just going to wrap up here quick. Yeah, I hope you'll all join the community and we can blow minds together. Smart contracts bring a ton of new, incredible use cases and power and innovation to Stellar. All right, for me personally, it's a hugely exciting new piece of tech, right? Like, what can I say? Like, I'm an engineer. I can say that Soroban will allow us to bridge the disconnect between developers and people on the fringes of financial inclusion, right?
Yeah.
Or that there's a lot of chances to learn, tinker, build, earn rewards with the adoption fund programs, like Morgan's doing. But what I will say is that I hope the experimentation we're all doing will lead to building real businesses, real projects, and real world use cases on Soroban to help further financial inclusion.
Yep.
If that gets you going the same way it does me, then my job's done. Cool. I can go eat dinner. But like, seriously, if you're excited about this, right, you can start experimenting with Soroban right now, right? It's live running on our experimental testnet called FutureNet. And I want to encourage you all to consider how and where you might fit into what's coming later this year when Soroban launches for real onto Stellar's mainnet. And if I were you, start coding, right? Check out Use Soroban. Tell your programmer friends to poke around, see if it's the right time to take a look at Stellar. There's a QR code on the screen. That'll take you to soroban.stellar.org. That is the place to go to learn more. There's links to everything you need there, docs, the Discord. Join the Discord, keep up with developments. All the devs that are building Soroban every day are on there answering your questions. Thank you so much for your time. I can't wait to see what you'll build. Back to you, Anuhya.
Thank you so much, Paul. I do want to re-emphasize here the fact that we are building Soroban out there in the streets, as I like to think, and not in like some laboratory. So everything is out there. Join the developer Discords, be active. As Paul had said it best, everyone on the stream that is watching or will ever come across this, you're already part of the Stellar ecosystem and community here. So come on over, start building, tinkering, and let's make this a vibrant and thriving community of developers. So yeah, thank you all for joining us on the stream. Stay tuned and we'll see you in the Discord. Take care. Bye, everyone.